Hello, and thank you for joining us for the topic of impaired driving and road safety. My name is Stephanie Cowger, and I'm part of the Coquitlam RCMP Community Policing Services Unit. I'm honored to host the first session in the 2022 Community Safety Webinar Series, so let's get started. With what we hope is the worst of COVID behind us and the world beginning to open up once again, we're going to see more celebrations, gatherings, sport events, at parks and graduations. The hope is that this webinar will improve road safety and raise awareness of the risks associated to impaired driving. In many situations, tragedies can be avoided if an impaired person makes the right choice. Joining us today on our panel are some of our amazing community partners. I'd like to introduce you. Marquita Collias. Marquita's Lower Mainland Community Member and Road Safety Speaker Member. Kathleen Madeline is our ICBC Road Safety Coordinator. Tracy Crawford joins us from MAD Canada, the BC and Yukon Chapter Services Manager. And Sergeant Ivo Sokurov was Coquitlam RCMP Traffic Unit Representative. We start today with a heartfelt presentation from Marquita Collias. Marquita lost her beautiful daughter to an impaired driver, my apologies, and knows firsthand how devastation can affect a family and a community. Marquita, I'll ask you to go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'd like to say a thank you and for inviting me to be here today. And I'm going to share my story of Cassandra. There may be a few photos of my daughter during the presentation, and there will be some photos of some vehicles as well. So I just want to advise people of that. And my goal is to have each one of you here today tell Cassandra's story and share it with others so that no one will drive under the influence of drugs or alcohol. In May of 2011, my 22-year-old daughter, Cassandra, was an active young woman. She had recently returned from the United States after receiving scholarships to attend colleges in both Florida and Texas. She played a variety of sports and was working 2 jobs while putting herself through university, studying to become a teacher. Cassandra was a talented athlete, and her favorite sport was women's fast pitch softball. She was the starting pitcher on the Surrey Storm senior ladies team and an assistant coach on the junior girls team. On May 3rd, 2011, Cassandra woke up early to go to university and write her exams. She had been studying for weeks and was excited and hoped that she would do well. Later that day, she came home and got ready to go out and coach the Surrey Storm senior girls team. She was excited to be playing a softball game herself later that evening. When she left home that night, little did she know that she would never come home again. In a few hours, someone would take her life away from her. About 10 p.m., Cassandra left the Cloverdale Athletic Park and was driving home. She stopped at the red light at the corner of 152nd Street and 64th Avenue in Surrey and waited for the light to turn green to make a left-hand turn. Her softball coach was in the next car beside her. As the light changed to green, he waved goodbye and proceeded through the intersection. Cassandra pulled out slightly into the intersection to make a left-hand turn. She sat there waiting for the traffic to pass. Suddenly, a white van came speeding down the curb lane. The light for the van had already been red for 12 seconds. The speeding van accelerated the last 500 feet of the intersection, got airborne over railroad tracks, and slammed into Cassandra, T-boning her driver's side door, striking her at 103 kilometers an hour. Cassandra's car was sent up and over the meridian. It was pushed about 1,200 feet up the road. Her driver's side door was crushed 2 feet into the side of her. The driver of the van got out of the van and went up to look at my daughter dying, and then took off running to flee the scene of the collision. Just after 11:30, my husband and I were woken up by a loud banging at the door and someone ringing our doorbell. We ran downstairs and opened the door to find 2 RCMP officers standing there asking if they could come in and speak with us. They asked my husband and I if we knew of someone who drove a red BMW. We were told by the police officers there had been a catastrophic collision. We asked if our daughter was alive, and they said they didn't know as the ambulance had taken her from the crash scene to Royal Columbian Hospital before they arrived. We asked what happened, and we were told that a suspected impaired driver was arrested at the scene of the collision. My husband and I drove to the hospital in New Westminster. We were praying our daughter would be okay, maybe a few broken bones, but alive. We arrived at the hospital and ran to the emergency room. We were ushered into a room to wait for a doctor to come speak with us. We waited for our oldest daughter and son to arrive. As we waited to hear any news, a feeling of panic grew in our hearts. We waited to see Cassandra and tell her that we loved her and that we would be there to look after her. As the doctor walked into the room, I could see in his eyes that the news that he was about to tell us was going to change our family forever. We would never again be the family that we were just hours earlier. The emergency room doctor proceeded to tell us that they did everything they could to try and save Cassandra's life, but there was far too much damage done to her body. She suffered blunt force trauma and had died due to multiple injuries that her body sustained in the collision. I sat there in disbelief and could not believe what he was saying. I just kept thinking, he must be wrong. He doesn't know Cassandra. She's a fighter. She's been hurt a few times through her sports, but always survived. She is a person who loves life and lives it to the fullest. And she's supposed to be alive for the next 60 years. Cassandra is just 22 years old. She cannot be dead. I tell the doctor she's been dating her boyfriend for 6 years, and they're talking about settling down and getting married soon. In a few years, my husband and I hope they'd be married and we'd be blessed with grandchildren. Cassandra is supposed to have her whole life ahead of her, live out her goals and her dreams to become a teacher and have a family of her own and grow old. She can't be gone, she can't be dead. And sadly, because of the actions and decisions made by someone who made the choice to drink and drive that night, our entire world was turned upside down, and all of our lives have been forever changed. We received a lifetime sentence of being without our daughter. And sadly, Cassandra received a death sentence. We asked the doctor if we could see our daughter, and we walked down the hallway of the emergency ward, and were taken in a room to see Cassandra laying there with a white sheet pulled up to her neck and a large tube inserted down her throat. And I thought they must have the wrong person, as this person laying before me had dark brown hair and Cassandra has blonde hair. There must be a mistake. I then realized that Cassandra's hair is covered in blood, and there are cuts on her beautiful face from the shards of broken glass. This happened when the windshield exploded in on her. She's laying there so still, so innocent, and all the vibrant life from her body is gone. 1 minute, she was so full of life and laughter and love, and in an instant, she now lies before me, dead. Her life is gone forever. A piece of all of us died that night. My husband and I held each other and we cried as we realized that we were just beginning to live in a nightmare that would probably affect us for the rest of our lives. An impaired driver had killed our baby girl. All of our hopes, our dreams, and all of our wishes for our daughter were gone. Excuse me. All of Cassandra's hopes and her dreams were gone, and she would never be allowed to live the life that she had dreamed of having. We asked for a priest to come to give our daughter her last rites, to bless her, and we prayed for God to take her to heaven. We then went to tell our 2 older children that their little sister was dead. It was one of the toughest things that a parent will ever have to do, is to tell siblings that their sister is dead. I watched my oldest daughter fall to the floor with a blood-curdling scream. I tried to catch her as she hit the floor. She was 4 months pregnant at the time with her second child, and I prayed that she would not miscarry this baby. My son stood there with tears in his eyes, looking at us. He couldn't speak as he was in shock. I saw the tears roll down his face as his baby sister would never be a part of his life again. I saw the pain in my husband's face and the tears in his eyes, and I knew that there was absolutely nothing I could do to make it better or take the pain away. His precious baby girl had been taken away from him. There was such a heavy silence in the room, and there was no words of comfort that we could give to one another. And all we could do was sit there in shock and cry. A short while later, her boyfriend and his parents came to the hospital, and we proceeded to tell him that the love of his life and the woman that he was supposed to marry was dead. She was struck and killed by a suspected drunk driver while on her way home from the softball game. And he tells us with tears in his eyes, "But I just talked to her 4 hours ago." Cassandra had called him as she was packing up her softball equipment before she left the park. She said she had a good day and she pitched a good game and even had a home run tonight. She told him that she loved him and she'd see him tomorrow. And now, tomorrow would never come for them to be together again. I told the doctor that I needed to see my daughter again. They allowed me to go back to the emergency room to see her. And I stood there looking at her body laying on the hospital gurney, knowing that this was one of the very last times that I would ever see my daughter. When I left this room, they'd be taking my daughter to the morgue. No parent is ever supposed to feel the heartbreaking emotional pain that I felt knowing my child was going to be taken to a morgue. I leaned down to kiss Cassandra goodbye, and I told her that I loved her and I would always remember her. I remember standing there and her whole life flashed before me. I remembered her as a beautiful baby girl. She had the most amazing blue eyes, and she had a smile that could light up a room. At the age of 2, she would go into the garage and play with her brother's hockey stick, or she'd pick up a bat and a ball and she'd come and say, "Mommy, let's play." At the age of 5, she found her love for softball, and at the age of 12, she wanted to become a softball pitcher, and she practiced for hours, throwing thousands of pitches to her dad. I stood there saying goodbye to my baby girl and my best friend for the last time. I told her that I was sorry that I could not stop the impaired driver from drinking and driving, but I would do everything I could possibly do to make sure that another family would never have to go through what we were going to have to live through. It broke my heart to say goodbye to her and leave her, but I knew my family also needed me to be there for them. I walked down the hall knowing I can't do anything to make this better for anyone. Because of someone's selfish actions, we had now been forced to live with this devastating pain for the rest of our lives. As we were leaving the Royal Columbian Hospital, I asked a nurse if they had any of my daughter's personal effects. The nurse handed me a clear plastic bag, and in the bottom of the bag were Cassandra's baseball cleats. And I could see her baseball uniform was all cut up in shreds. They needed to cut it off her body as they tried to save her. And now this cut up uniform is one of the last things I have left to hold on to of my daughter. My husband and I drove home in silence as we were in shock. There were no words of comfort that we could say to one another. There was nothing we could do to change the carnage that had taken place that night, or save our daughter's life and bring her back home to her family. We drove home and came upon the road closure in Surrey where the collision had taken place. I could see a white van in the middle of the road and the debris strewn across the road. The police were picking up pieces of my daughter's car and her softball equipment off the road, and there was so much debris. I could see her school textbooks, her baseball uniform, equipment bag, twisted black metal, was strewn across the road. I could see the front bumper of her car and shards of broken glass all over the road, but I couldn't see Cassandra's car as it had been towed away. My husband and I identified ourselves to the police, and I asked if they had found Cassandra's purse as it had her ID in it. They said yes, and we asked if we could take her purse and her softball bag home, and the officer picked it up off the road and handed it to me. As the police officer handed me her belongings, I could see his pain in his eyes as he knew this collision had changed all of our lives. As he handed me her baseball glove, he said, "I am so sorry for your loss." I realized this baseball glove was the last thing she touched in her life. I held it to my chest and close to my heart and walked back to our car to drive home. And I just kept thinking, Cassandra's only 3 blocks from coming home. She was supposed to come home to her family. We arrived home at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, and I knew I had to call my office to tell my coworkers that my daughter had been killed last night. I didn't know when I'd be able to return to work. I had to call my sister and my brother-in-law to tell them that their niece was dead. I had to call my mother-in-law and tell her that her granddaughter was dead. I had to call Cassandra's other aunts and uncles, her cousins, her best friends, her employers, and her coach to tell her an impaired driver killed Cassandra last night. When I called and spoke to her softball coach, I heard him scream at the other end of the phone, and he just kept saying, "No, no, no." I just waved goodbye to her at the intersection a few hours ago. The light turned green, and I waved goodbye as she pulled out to make a left-hand turn. He said I went through the green light and headed home. I explained to him that a few seconds later, an impaired driver came speeding down the curb lane, running a red light, and it got airborne over the railroad tracks. The driver slammed into Cassandra's driver's side door, striking her at 103 kilometers an hour as she waited to make a left-hand turn. Cassandra's car exploded on impact, sending her up and over a meridian and sending debris everywhere. Hours later, our home slowly turned into a floral shop as flowers and cards of condolences started to arrive. Her boyfriend and his parents came back to our home. We all sat there in disbelief. It felt like we were living in a nightmare, but we were all awake, and this was real. We were not going to wake up and have this nightmare go away. We were living every parent's worst nightmare. Someone had killed our child. We didn't have any answers, and we kept watching the news to try and get any details as we could. We watched the news and saw a video of our daughter's car with the left-hand turn light still flashing on the car. People were all around the intersection. What I did not see was the actual side impact of Cassandra's car. I had seen the white van that struck her that night, and there was some damage to the front grille work, but it was not all that smashed up looking. We learned days later that a man out walking his dog was one of the witnesses who saw the collision happen. He saw the driver run away into the bushes, fleeing the scene of the collision. He chased after that person running into the bushes, but could not see them because it was so dark. Suddenly, he saw a blue light in the darkness. The light was from someone on a cell phone. He found the suspected driver hiding in the grass and held the driver there until the RCMP arrived. A few days later, I asked 2 RCMP officers to take me to the towing yard. I needed to see my daughter's car. I then understood why my daughter couldn't have survived the collision. My daughter's driver's side of the door took full impact of 3,000 pounds of steel traveling at a speed of 103 kilometers an hour, crashing into the side of her. She was crushed to death by blunt force trauma forced upon her. No one could have survived that impact. Those images are the ones that you don't get out of your head. My brain replays these images, and I see them every time I close my eyes to fall asleep. No one should ever die like this. 2 days later, we went to the funeral home to make arrangements for our daughter's funeral. We needed to choose a casket And then we had to decide, do we bury our child or do we have her cremated? Parents should never have to be put in that position that we were put in, or to make the decisions that we had to make that day. A few days later, on May 10th, it was Mother's Day. I spent my Mother's Day picking out the clothes that my daughter would be cremated in. The next day, I went to see my daughter for the very last time, as she was going to be taken to be cremated. I walked into the room at the funeral home and saw my daughter lying in a casket. It is something that no parent should ever have to see. And I'm still haunted by seeing this. Cassandra was killed 6 weeks before her 23rd birthday. I placed her birthday card that I had bought for her in the casket. I put a letter that I wrote to her telling her how much I loved her. I placed a little teddy bear that she loved when she was younger. And I placed a red heart-shaped pillow her boyfriend made for her when she went away to university in Texas. The inscription read, "Wherever you go, you will always have my heart." I cannot even begin to tell you what it is like for a mother to see her child laying in a casket, or to see someone close the casket lid on your child knowing they're going to be taken shortly to be cremated. We knew that there was only one way we could bring our daughter home, and that was to have her body cremated so we could bring her ashes back home. She needed to be with her family. She would have wanted to be home with her family. A day later, we held her funeral and over 1,500 people came to celebrate her life. She was remembered as a kind young woman who left her footprints in the hearts of so many people. Her death had such a ripple effect within the community, and everyone felt our pain and sadness. They knew that this was the death of a bright young woman that should never have happened as it was 100% preventable. Every year, impaired driving leaves a terrible trail of death, injury, heartbreak, and destruction. From this point of view alone, it has a greater impact on Canadian society than any other crime. In terms of injuries and death resulting in hospitalization, impaired driving is clearly the crime which has the most significant social loss to this country. If you drink alcohol or smoke marijuana or do any other drugs, you can be impaired. Since the legalization of marijuana in 2018, drug-impaired driving has risen 43%. You should not be drinking or driving on the roads, putting others at risk. Even small amounts of alcohol or drug use can affect your ability to drive safely. Your brain needs to be alert and focused at all times on driving. While some people may argue that cannabis is far safer than alcohol, research shows that people don't typically just use alcohol or just use cannabis. They usually use both at the same time. This can be a dangerous combination, especially behind the wheel of a vehicle. People's decision to drink or do drugs and then get behind the wheel of a vehicle can change their life, the life of a passenger, and the lives of so many innocent people. The decision you make can change the lives of your family and other families as well. In 2011, the year Cassandra was killed, there were 1,074 other innocent Canadians killed by impaired drivers, and over 62,000 people were injured in just that 1 year in Canada. What it cost in human life is immeasurable and irreplaceable. The pain of losing a loved one to an impaired driver is indescribable. There are no words in the English language to even come close to describing what it is like to lose a child and how it affects families. Every special occasion, every holiday, every Christmas, there's someone always missing from our family get-togethers, and there's always an empty chair at the dinner table. To this day, 11 years later, my family still hurts from the pain of losing Cassandra. She's the first thing we think of in the morning and the last thing we think of at night. Those special moments that we used to share are gone. Sadly, she has now 4 young nephews, ages 12, 10, 3, and 1.5, that she never got to know, and they never got to know their aunt. She's never got to be a part of their lives. They only know what she looks like through photos and the stories that we share with them. I ask all of you, after years of education and awareness, is there anyone who does not know that you should not drink or do drugs and drive? Yet sadly, we continue to see impaired driving as the #1 criminal cause of death in Canada. In the province of BC, since 2010, there have been 277,506 people who have received immediate roadside prohibitions, administrative driving prohibitions, and 24-hour suspensions. These suspensions have been given out to people who were found to be driving impaired. When an impaired driver makes the choice to drive while being impaired and causes a collision and kills someone, that is no accident. That is a vehicular homicide due to impairment. They make the decision to be reckless in their actions and drive while being impaired. And that is like holding a loaded 3,000-pound weapon between their hands, steering it down a roadway. They are putting everyone on the road at risk. And sadly, it is costing innocent people their lives, and thousands of families like mine are losing their loved ones each year. I'd like to remind people that the world is opening up after 2 years of dealing with the COVID pandemic. People want to see their friends and family members. There'll be family get-togethers, social get-togethers, graduations, weddings, and so many other events where alcohol or drugs may be used. Drugs and alcohol can change the direction of your life. They may include making a risky decision by getting into a car with someone under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Impaired driving, distracted driving, and dangerous driving are all serious offenses, and they are prevalent and pose substantial threat to the safety of the public. If any of your social activities include drugs or alcohol, please have a plan in place before you take that first drink. You can encourage your friends and family to make smart choices. You can volunteer to be the designated driver and share the responsibility of getting your friends and family home safely. Call a taxi, take transit, call Uber, or have a family member come and pick you up. And remember that a designated driver is not a person who's had the least amount of beers. A designated driver is the person who is a responsible one and decides not to drink at all, so they can get their friends and family home safely. Getting your friends home safely is one of the most important things that you will ever do, as it only takes seconds for a collision to occur. Last month, I actually spoke to a mother who lost her 17-year-old son 2 years ago. A week before his graduation, he and his friends went on a camping trip to celebrate their graduation. They went up to the mountains, and on that last day he was heading home, she told me she and her son had many conversations about drinking and driving, and he knew never to get into a car with someone who had been drinking or doing drugs. But on the last day of the camping trip, one of the other kids said he was going to the store to pick up some food to barbecue on their last night there. Her son didn't know that that driver had been drinking and smoking marijuana and was too impaired to drive. And sadly, her son got into the car. The driver was driving too fast, and the driver did not navigate a bend on the logging road, and the car went down an embankment and struck a tree. Her son was killed. A week later, instead of celebrating her son's graduation, she was making his funeral arrangements. That split decision he made to get into the vehicle with an impaired driver cost him his life. Her family will never be the same. I hope you can understand the consequences of risky behavior while driving, as these actions can have dire consequences and be deadly. Your full attention needs to be on the road and what is happening around you. Please Do not drink or do drugs and drive, or let anyone else drink or do drugs and drive. Be a safe and responsible driver. With so many options to get home safely, there is no excuse to drink and drive. On May 3rd, 2011, my daughter lost her life through no fault of her own. And sadly, instead of fulfilling her dream of becoming a teacher, a wife, a mother, she became another statistic of impaired driving. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to share Cassandra's story. I just ask, if people see someone who you may suspect may be driving while impaired, please call 911 and report them. You may be saving their life or someone else's loved one down the road. And we really need to change our way of thinking and make it socially unacceptable to allow anyone to get behind the wheel and drive after drinking or doing drugs. Safe driving is everyone's responsibility. And please be the change that we need to see in the world to stop impaired driving. Thank you.
Marquita, thank you very much for sharing such a personal and touching story with us. Families for Justice is clearly a labor of love that you do, dedicated to Cassandra and all the others who have been lost, and we honor the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We now turn our focus to Tracy Crawford with MAD Canada.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to bring up the presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Marquita, too, for sharing the story and sharing a little bit about Cassandra. It's nice to actually learn a little bit about who she is and what she meant to you and to the community. So thank you for sharing. My name is Tracy Crawford. I'm from MAD Canada, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about impaired driving. Impaired driving is one of the leading causes of criminal death in Canada. Every year, hundreds of Canadians are killed and thousands are injured in impaired driving crashes. Impaired driving is not an accident. Someone makes that choice to get behind a wheel impaired. And MAD Canada actually created a PSA, a public service announcement, where we're encouraging people to stop using the word accident when referring to an impaired driving crash. Our latest statistics from 2019, there were approximately almost 87,000 total federal criminal charges and provincial short-term license suspensions in Canada. That works out to be on average about 238 charges and short-term suspensions every single day in Canada, or 10 charges and suspensions made every hour for alcohol, cannabis, or drug or impaired driving in Canada. So those are pretty significant numbers. You know, throughout Canada, this is continuing to see being as a problem of impaired, you know, in Canada, and definitely working with different partners and getting the message out there is really important. Marquita touched on this as well. I just wanted to reiterate, driving high is driving impaired. Unfortunately, there's still some people who think that driving under the influence of cannabis is not risky, but in fact, cannabis does impair your judgment, impairs your motor skills, your reaction times, and it definitely does increase your likelihood of being in the crash. And mixing alcohol and cannabis definitely increases your ability to get into a crash, affecting so many lives. In 2019, 13.2 cannabis users reported driving within 2 hours of using cannabis. Based on research studies that were conducted back in 2019 and 2020, it's recommended to wait a minimum of 4 hours after you've consumed. That's based on research with doctors and analyzing blood counts and stuff like this. And it's after about 4 hours, your ability to drive is much better. We do recommend longer than that, but at the very minimum, we do encourage people to wait 4 hours. But the statistics showing it's 2 hours people are driving, which is quite concerning. For MAD, we really focus on 4 key areas of anything that we do. We do victim services, youth services, public awareness, and public policy. I'm just going to touch on this very little. We offer quite a different array of programs and services to victims, survivors, and their families, from online support. We have reflection sessions to in-person, etc. So we have quite a bit different options out there for anybody who needs the support. Currently, we are working on bringing a BC provincial monument to British Columbia. So we actually have quite a few different memorial monuments right across Canada, and that's what we're working on right now. So right now we're looking for a location in BC where we can have a loved one's name sketched onto the monument, and it's a nice, safe, and pretty place that family members can go and reflect in a nice surrounding. A key area for us, as mentioned, is education and awareness. And based on the numbers that we see with youth, this is a huge area we put a lot of energy into. So we have a school assembly program. This is a large scale presentation we do, usually in a gym or an auditorium, where we bring quite a few different grade levels down into this room. We have a video that's about 45 minutes long, introduces you to the characters, there's a party scene, and then there's a crash. And at the end, we have real life victim stories who talk about what happened to them, how impaired driving has affected their lives. It's a very impactful program. We also have, which I just realized it's not on here, sorry about that, Weed Out the Risk. This is something fairly new to us. It's only been a couple of years that we've been running this program. This is a cannabis educational program, and it's for classroom-based only. So we go to different classrooms throughout Canada, and we just talk about what cannabis is, how it affects your bodies, THC levels, and go through all that type of information with the kids and answer questions. And it's a more intimate presentation because it's really based on classroom by classroom. Both of our programs have been adopted to go virtual. The one thing we've learned with COVID is we were able to adapt fairly quickly. Back when shutdowns were happening and with schools not being able to go into the classrooms, we adopted all of our programs to be virtual, and we're still offering that today because we're able to now go to areas that typically we would never be able to go to that are quite rural. So it's actually enhanced our ability to reach more kids. It's quite good for our, for us to be able to offer these opportunities. A little bit about youth statistics. So alcohol and drugs impairment is a factor in about 55% of crashes between 16 and 25 years old. That's a pretty high number. 36.2% of 16 to 19-year-old fatally injured drivers, and 43% of between the 20 and 25-year-olds fatally injured drivers tested positive for drugs. What we see now is cannabis and drug impaired driving is exceeding alcohol impaired driving. So, we really want to focus on education and awareness and information about cannabis and the dangers and what it does, how it does affect your ability to drive a vehicle. Another area we really try to encourage and try to promote is if you see someone that you suspect is driving impaired, please call 911. The police want your call. They want to be able to intercept before a crash occurs. So MAD works with quite a few different community partners and in different communities, such as Port Coquitlam and Port Moody, where we've had a variety of these signs posted throughout the communities. It's just a reminder about what you can do to prevent a crash and what you can do to help support road safety. We provided a locations where an impaired driver was charged or removed off the road. And we placed these signs in those locations. And it's a really impactful visual reminder as you're driving through the community of all these different signs that you see of where impaired drivers are. So it's been a very impactful. This is only in 5 communities at this time in Saskatchewan. So this shows you all the locations that we've had the mobile 911 sign placed in the community. So it shows you visually at a glance how many impaired drivers are being caught in Saskatchewan in these locations. I would definitely encourage you, if you have time, to go to our MAD Saskatoon chapter website and go to the RID 911 tab, and you can look at this map in more detail. And it's quite disturbing, but it's also quite visually impactful of knowing how many impaired drivers are caught. I'm just going to bypass that. So, and I'll just go into the last little piece here. One of the areas to, obviously police officers are working really hard to get our impaired drivers off the roads and make our community safe. So this program of the Alexa team, it's an award. It's a program that we're recognizing extraordinary contributions from officers, RCMP and municipal, in removing impaired drivers off the roads. This Alexa team was created, in memory of Alexa Midler. She was a 4-year-old girl that was killed in 2008 in Delta by an impaired driver. Officers who remove a minimum of 12 impaired drivers during each year are recognized as Alexa team members, and officers who remove a minimum of 25 are on the Alexa team All-Star. In 2021, in the Lower Mainland, we had 139 officers recognized, and 10 of them were from the Tri-Cities area. The top officer in that time removed 81 impaired drivers, and in Tri-Cities, the officer Constable Lamb removed 39 impaired drivers. So that's a pretty significant number in the Tri-Cities from one officer, and that's really quite remarkable. And we really do appreciate all the officers' work in keeping our community safe. And I don't think we can remind people enough: never drive impaired, never get in a car with someone that you suspect may be driving impaired. Plan ahead before going out, and call 911 if you see someone that you suspect is driving impaired. Impaired driving is 100% preventable. There's no reason to drive impaired. We have too many resources in our community, and there's too many other options. So please make that choice of never driving impaired. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. We appreciate all the amazing work that MAD Canada does. Those are some pretty amazing stats. I wasn't aware. So thank you for the education. It's fantastic. We're now going to move into, we're going to bring all of our panel back. As you can see, welcome back again, Marquita, Kathleen, Sergeant Sokrov, and Tracy. Thanks for all of the questions that you as a public have submitted. We'd love to answer all of them, but we just don't have the time to do that. So we've chose the questions that are most commonly asked. And excuse me, if you do have questions that weren't answered through the presentation and that we were unable to answer during our Q&A, please, by all means, send an email to the address listed at the end of the webinar, and we'll do our best to respond to all the questions and provide answers. So many of our questions are surrounding legalities of driving while impaired. So I think a number of these questions will be best answered by Sergeant Sokrov, but by all means, if others on the panel have additional information to share, please jump in. So with that said, let's get started. We'll get started with the questions. My apologies. First question, what can I do if I see somebody driving drunk?
Thank you, Stephanie. And before I start with the questions, I just want to thank Marquita for a very moving presentation, and Tracy for sharing all of MAD Canada's involvements and resources available to the public. The question, what can I do if I see someone driving drunk? Call 911, ideally from a hands-free device. Try to obtain a full or partial license plate for the vehicle, vehicle description, the last direction of travel, if there were any time delays from when you last saw the vehicle, and make note and tell the dispatcher what you observed that led you to the conclusion that the driver might be impaired. And do your best to maintain a safe following distance and follow the traffic laws.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question, what happens if people are caught while driving under the influence of alcohol?
I want to be clear that impaired driving is a criminal offense. If a driver is caught impaired by alcohol or drugs, they are committing a criminal code offense, and the police will be recommending charges to Crown Counsel.
Excellent. Is it legal to refuse a breath test?
No, that's illegal. That is also a criminal code offense. If a person fails or refuses to comply with the breath test without having a reasonable excuse, they're committing a criminal code offense. And in these cases, police will also be recommending criminal charges to Crown Counsel.
Excellent, thank you. The next question, does body weight factor into how intoxicated one can get?
Regardless of height, weight, and gender, the rate of alcohol leaving your body is about the same for all people. Do not rely on weight to decide if you're safe to drive after drinking or consuming drugs. Best plan is to not drive after drinking or taking drugs.
And the last question I have in here, are breath test results always accurate?
Yes, police officers using these devices are trained to ensure that the results are accurate. In addition, we also have a process to maintain accuracy of these devices.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We also have questions surrounding education and impaired driving, and I'm hoping Kathleen and Tracy, perhaps you can help us out with some of these. Excellent. Kathleen, we know Counterattack has been active for many years, making effective changes in the community. Can you tell us a bit more about the program?
Sure. So Counterattack is a partnership between ICBC and police services across the province. And that is where ICBC contributes to overtime shifts so that police officers can get out and look for impaired drivers more readily. And typically, the police officers use this funding for overtime around Christmas time as well as in the summer, because that's when we know people are out celebrating a little bit more, and potentially more enforcement has to be on the road with respect to impaired driving. This partnership began in 1977. The year it began, before that year, in 1976, 300 British Columbians on average were dying due to impaired driving. So after this program that has been involved for many, many years, and like Marquita was talking about, who doesn't know that you cannot drink and drive or drive while impaired? I think overall now, everybody knows this. Unfortunately, we are still seeing on average 65 British Columbians die due to impaired driving. And like what Marquita and Mad and everybody else is saying, one is too many because it's 100% preventable. People are choosing to drive impaired. There's no accident about that. So our main message, and the reason why we support road safety speakers like Marquita, we support MAD, and of course police, is please plan a safe ride home before you decide to have that first drink.
Excellent, thank you. And Tracy, how can we best educate people, especially the youth, on the risks associated with impaired driving? And Kathleen, feel free to jump in on there as well.
Sure.
No, I think the best thing is just as for parents to have open conversations with their children. You know, it is never too young to start having the conversations. MAD does have a program called Brain Power, which we provide to teachers, and it's for elementary school based kids, talking about what happens when you put certain things in your body. You know, in middle school and high school, I mean, these kids are exposed to a lot of different things they see on TV and video games and other social media apps. That, you know, they aren't ready to have the conversations, but they need it to come from a sort of a resource that is honest and not from TV or apps. Talking to, you know, parents talking to the kids about it, talking about making the safe choices, talking about when you're in a situation with the person you're with is impaired, and making sure the kids know that they can call home for getting a safe ride home without having getting into trouble, at least at that time. You know, and being in schools, you know, ICBC, the police, as well as MAD, we constantly are in the schools talking to the kids, you know, with real information and trying to spread that awareness out there. And I think that's the biggest key thing, is repetitiveness and constantly being in the community and being very honest with the kids.
Excellent.
I agree with everything that you said, Tracy, and also to parents. And I think for the most part, we are very good, but being a role model for your kids. So your kids watching you make a plan before you actually head out as well to celebrate, or seeing you take an Uber, or seeing you not drinking at all so that you can get your family home safe. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, agreed.
One thing for me, we've shared the stats of fatal impaired collisions I just want the public to be mindful that the statistics of serious injury, impaired driving related conditions are a lot higher as well. And we're talking life-altering collisions. The person may survive, but their quality of life will be impacted forever, and probably their families as well.
I can attest to that. Yes, that's true.
Excellent. Thank you all. We'll have one final round. If I can ask each of our panelists if there's a specific point that you'd like to share that our audience can take away, please step forward.
Well, maybe I'll just start. I just like to remind people, you know, every day is a gift, and we never know how long we're going to be on this earth. But there's lots of things we can do to keep ourselves safe and our families safe. And one of them is when you're driving to have your full attention on the road and what your surroundings are. And by drinking or doing drugs, that changes your ability to focus and to be alert. And I just ask people to, you know, remember they have families at home, they have children possibly at home. Everybody wants to get home safely. And, you know, when you get your driver's license at 16 or 18, whatever it may be, it's a privilege. It's not your right just because you turn 16. It's a privilege to have a license. And don't do anything to lose that license. It's very important for your lifestyle as well, to be able to get to work or to go shopping or whatever, but do it and do it responsibly.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to.
Sorry, go ahead, Kathleen.
Oh, I just wanted to, thanks to Marquita and obviously Tracy for all their work in the community. 100% agree with Marquita, the importance of planning ahead. Because after you've had a couple of drinks yourself, that's not really the time to plan. Maybe you're not making the best decision, or you might be tempted, you know, if you've got somebody who you also trust saying, hey, you know what, I've only had a few drinks, get into the car. We're 5 minutes away from home. Just come on. And if you yourself have already had a couple of drinks, you know, it's 2 a.m. and you don't maybe have those open lines of communications with your parents or other ways, you might not make the best decision at that point. So you need to think about all these scenarios beforehand and have that plan in place.
Excellent. Sergeant Sokro?
Yes, I just wanted to say that impaired driving does continue to be a problem, and it is a priority for all police agencies to do enforcement for it, and we'll continue to do that.
Excellent. Tracy, any last words of wisdom?
I think the biggest piece is if you see somebody that you think is driving impaired, call 911. That's going to be the safest thing you do. Not only driving, also operating any motorized vehicle, that's boating, quadding. Definitely call 911. And I also would say, sorry, my throat, you know, on all of our websites, I would encourage people to take a moment to educate themselves. I know ICBC, I know the RCMP, as well as MAD, all have a lot of information on our websites that can be really helpful for parents, helpful for youth, anybody, even people who operate a business who are having Christmas parties and different barbecues. I would encourage you to take a moment and educate yourself about impaired driving and how you can prevent it, and talk to your staff, employees, and your family.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up today, I would like to thank our tech team. They were able to get things moving with the video. So Marquita, with your blessing, we'd like to share the video.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If tomorrow starts without me, you don't have to fear. the sun should rise and find your eyes filled with tears. I wish you wouldn't cry the way you did today, while thinking of many things we didn't say. When tomorrow starts without me, try to understand that an angel came and called my name and took me by the hand and said my place was ready in heaven high above. I'd have to leave behind all those I dearly love, I dearly love. I have to leave you now. I dearly love, I dearly love. I have to leave you now. As I walked away, a tear fell from my eye. For all my life, I never thought that this was how I die. I had so much to live for and so much yet to do. It seemed almost impossible that I was leaving you, leaving you. I'm leaving you now. That I was leaving you, leaving you. I'm leaving you now. If tomorrow starts without me, don't think we're apart. For every time you think of me, please know I'm in your heart. I'm in your heart, I'm in your heart, I'm always in your heart. I'm in your heart, I'm in your heart, I'll always be in your heart.
Thank you, Marquita. It was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
As always, our time goes awfully quickly during these sessions and our hour is up. So I'd like to thank our panelists very much for joining us in this great discussion. Thank you to all of you who attended and signing on with us today and throughout the year. I hope you found this webinar informative and that you'll join us for future sessions. There will be a survey link on the screen, as well as resources will be emailed to you later today. Sorry, the link is not on the screen, but you will receive the email today. We really do appreciate your feedback and we'd love to hear any future topics that would interest you. Please don't forget to follow Coquitlam RCMP on social media to get details on how to sign up for our next webinar. Thank you again and hope to see you next time.
Thank you.